So basically, this group formed through a survey we sent out, just sort of wondering where people are at with Kirtan Kriya, sort of what level you are, how comfortable with it are you, do you want to teach it, have you been teaching it? And then we sort of wanted to do a deep dive to really get down to the nitty gritty of it. And you know, if you are teaching this to others, you're going to get a lot of questions, and sometimes we don't have all the answers. So we sort of wanted to take a second look at this meditation and just to come together around it and see what we can do. So today we will be going over a presentation about it, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms, and we'll have Fletcher here. Fletcher is a board member. If you haven't met Fletcher yet, he also led for us on the Meditation Challenge Week, so you might have seen him then. Fletcher is in Wilmington, North Carolina, and he's also an engineer, right? I can't remember what type of engineer.
Oh, nuclear.
Nuclear, sure. So Fletcher will be in one group, and he is also into meditation, so I'm sure you've seen him before. And then Linda Lang will be in a group, correct, Linda? If her internet is working, there she is.
I'm here, and everybody else is frozen, but hopefully I'll be functional on this end and we'll be able to stay together. Yes.
Great. Yeah, we can hear you, so that's fine. And then our other leader will be Jane,
Good.
who I'm sure you've also seen before because she's also last year was a meditation leader, and she's been in our peer-to-peer group program. So she's been leading those for us as well. So she should be a familiar face by now. So there is Jane. And then the good news is we have Kirti. She is live.
Oh, she's sideways.
All right.
Okay, it worked.
Great. So I will be presenting for Kirti then. Kirti, I just went ahead and introduced Fletcher, Linda, and Jane, and pretty much told everyone the flow of this session and why we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
So if you want to take it from here.
Sure. So I won't be able to do my slides. So will you do the slides?
Yes, I will.
Chelsea, please.
Are you ready for
Thank
them?
you. I'm ready.
Okay. Here we
Thanks
go.
everyone for your patience. What will we do without technology? So I can, okay.
I'm pulling them up. Okay. We can all see that. Are we ready? Kirti, you are muted, so I'm going to ask you to unmute.
Chelsea already introduced everyone. I hope it's okay to just keep over this. If I missed a few minutes, and let me know. So I will pass it on to Jane, who will be taking it from here for a moment.
So I welcome everybody again. It's nice to see all of you. And we just thought what we do is give you an overview of who registered for this particular study group. Like, who are we? Who's here? And this is based on the registrations as of yesterday. So we've actually, the registrants went up to nearly 40, but some people can't attend it live. So there'll be here, they'll be getting the recording. But there were nearly 40 registrants for today. And it's a microcosm of who we are as a group, who we are as graduates. So made up of yoga teachers and yoga therapists. We've got health coaches amongst us, healers and Reiki and massage therapy and other modalities, dementia care consultants, some doctors, physicians, some educators, and some business people, right? So Fletcher is an engineer. I'm a marketing consultant. Somebody said they were an accountant. We have an IT person. So many of us wear multiple hats. And I know for me, I'm very proud to wear this particular hat as a brain longevity specialist. So a wide, varied group here. So in the survey that Chelsea referred to that went out with this registration, we asked a few questions, and we asked people, if you look at the chart in the middle here, how often you practice the Kirtan Kriya and how often you teach the Kirtan Kriya. And so if you're a data geek, don't add up the numbers because they don't add up to the total registrants now, but you'll get a sense of the blue bar reflects how often people reported that they practice the Kirtan Kriya. So you can see that the majority of us said that we practice once in a while. And some of us said we practice regularly, and some said no, not often, or no, not really. And that's okay, right? No judgment here. It's there for you as a foundation, and maybe today with a little bit more information behind you, you'll take on that practice, right? And then we asked how often you teach. And so most people said they're not really teaching. Some are teaching once in a while, and a handful are teaching regularly. So again, maybe with a little more information and experience under your belt, a little more confidence, you'll take it out to the world. But it's wonderful if you're practicing it on your own, of course. And those that are teaching it in their senior classes, they're teaching it in their mainstream yoga classes, in dementia support groups, and in private sessions as well. We asked, whoops, go back, not quite done. Okay, so we asked, have you attended one of the meditation or memory challenges that the foundation does every year? And in this group, really, there were a lot of no's, 24 no's, yet in the actual meditation challenge this year, there were a lot of graduates there, and a lot of the graduates had questions, which was one of the reasons why we decided to hold this study group, right, to be able to answer some of those questions. And we asked, are you here because you have specific questions about the Kirtan Kriya, or are you here because you just wanted to participate? And most of you said that you just wanted to participate. So I think we're just all a bunch of Kirtan Kriya junkies at this point, or groupies at this point. And of course, we know why, right? So, so with that, Chelsea, you can go ahead. And that just gives a little snapshot of who we are and why we're here.
Sorry about that. I clicked the wrong button.
Yeah. And then Kirti will go through the research, right?
Yes. So what I wanted to, before we get started with that, I wanted to mention the agenda for today's meeting. And so what we're going to do is we're going to review the research on Kirtan Kriya. Then we're going to go through some frequently asked questions in the group as we are now. And I'll explain that in a moment. And then we'll go into breakout sessions. So there'll be 3 breakout rooms led by Linda, Jane, and then Fletcher and myself will be the 3rd group. And that's where we're going to discuss more in depth and address any questions. And if anyone wants to share any, comments, observations, their experience, or their questions, even in, in greater detail. So we have about 25 minutes for that, and then we'll have a closing, a nice closing. So, so let's talk about the research on Kirtan Kriya, and why we wanted to do this is really to give you more tools to be able to introduce Kirtan Kriya to your students, or if you're marketing to new places or giving a presentation and you want to really be able to discuss this in a little more, with more confidence, and really feel that it's not just something that maybe you might feel you're out on a limb. We just really have so much knowledge and research that we've accumulated over almost 20 years. We want to share this with you. And I will say, yes, you will get the slides of this presentation, so don't worry, you'll be able to reuse them. That's the whole purpose of it. So, so before we start, I just thought we should very briefly review this. I know most of us here are very familiar with Kirtan Kriya, but so Kirtan Kriya, it means a singing exercise. In it, the words Kirtan Kriya, and because we sing it, or in yoga, we call it chanted. So there are 4 sounds, sa, ta, na, ma, that correspond to touching your fingertips, as you can see here for the drawing. The focus of concentration is with each sound, you visualize the sound, or sometimes we call it light, coming in from the top of the head, out the third eye, as you can see from the picture, the image. And then we do it for 2 minutes out loud, 2 minutes in a whisper, 4 minutes silently, 2 minutes in a whisper, 2 minutes out loud. That's the sequence. So just to review, make sure, I'm sure we all know this. Next slide, please. So here's how Kirtan Kriya works, because some people were asking during the last meditation challenge. And so Kirtan Kriya works in a variety of ways, but this is what we do know, certainly that the fingers and the vocal, the mouth, the tongue, the jaw, the lips are very highly represented in the brain. What does that mean? It means that anything that you do with your hands or that you taste, right, gives an incredible amount of information to the brain. If you think, I think about this, maybe I'm a nerd, but I think about, the touch, like by touching something, we immediately know if it's something hard or soft, if it's something dangerous, maybe if it's, hot, it could be, or scratchy, or what kind of the information we get is incredible from just touching something. So immediately we, our brain is like, so imagine touching our fingertips and then, of course, according to a certain formula, which is the Kirtan Kriya. So the fingertips are very highly represented in the brain, your whole face. But if you look at this map, you'll see the upper lip, the lips, the lower lip. Look at again, the information we get from our lips and our tongue about what we are experiencing out there, right? And so the same thing as we chant, first out loud and then in a whisper, it's a different feeling, right? If we've all practiced it and we see, we have experience, and we should notice how we experience that. And then we go silent. Again, it's a specific formula. So this is what we know, from the Western point of view, what we know that the brain, how the brain is activated by Kirtan Kriya. Because of this chart, which is a very old a standard medical, they call it homunculus of the brain. So it's the representation. And as an aside, when I was little, my grandfather had a stroke. And I remember he was bedbound probably for 10 years, couldn't speak anymore. But I remember noticing that what they gave him to do, and he really couldn't move, but they gave him these balls, to squeeze. And, now with my life experience, you realize, this movement, it's a rehabilitation tool also, if we think about that. So yes, we are moving our hands and it affects the brain, and by affecting the brain, it affects back to our hands. So it's a loop. So next slide. Sorry, Chelsea, I kept talking. So then what we also know is that in the mouth, like everywhere else in the body, there are meridian acupuncture points and meridians, according to the Oriental healing systems. And so this is a interpretation chart, is not, a studied exactly. It's not a medical chart, is an interpretation chart of these acupuncture points and meridian points on the upper palate. And if you can see a little bit behind the teeth. So there are a lot of points that are activated in the mouth. And so that's how we also know that Kirtan Kriya really, is an enhancing, a brain enhancing. And then really, if you think, this is the mouth, and right above is the brain. So it's not like it's traveling from somewhere else, from further out in the body. It's right there. And then just a disclaimer here, we do not have permission to reproduce this drawing, and so this will be the one slide that will not be included in your slide deck, because we don't have that permission. But we can share it with you sort of a one-on-one basis. So next slide. So now, as far as the tools for you to know, who are the research institutions that have carried out now almost 20 years of research on Kirtan Kriya. And they are. We have UCLA at Los Angeles, the University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia, and West Virginia University. They have all carried out these studies on Kirtan Kriya. The last three are research partners on different projects, not necessarily Kirtan Kriya and yoga, unfortunately, not yet. Now, next slide. So this information that we'll be sharing today is all published in these white papers. This is our very first one, Yoga and Medical Meditation as Alzheimer's Prevention Medicine. The next one, also, Chelsea, next slide, please. Is also a great white paper. This is based on a study, on a couple of studies at West Virginia University. Next slide. And then we have a summary of all the research in this white paper that will explain, we'll just give you kind of the nuts and bolts. So as a summary, we have this chart of the benefits of 12 minutes a day of Kirtan Kriya, the effects and the outcomes. So the effects are more the sort of the scientific side of it. And then the outcomes are what people experience. So we give you here information both for maybe a more educated audience, and or possibly for, if you want to present a new program at a independent or a senior living community, or you're marketing yourself. It's nice to have, like the medical part, the more scientific part, and then the outcomes you can use when you do speak to the public. So to make it accessible so that people can relate to that and can understand what we're talking about, right? So next slide. This is the iconic, we call it the iconic images of Kirtan Kriya, because this was our very, very first study in 2003. And it's so stunning, but it's also relatively simple to explain and convey even to the general public. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, here or separately. But just to explain this before picture, you can see these dimples in the top side, and you can see that the back side at the bottom is kind of ragged and definitely asymmetrical. And so this is a picture of the brain, of blood flow in the brain taken from the neck up. So you see not from here, the top, but from the bottom. And so it definitely, I think everybody can understand that it's really not supposed to be so asymmetrical. And then let's look at the after picture. Thank you. So the after picture is really it's an eye opener because first of all, you see that it's kind of more, it's more symmetrical. It's like almost puffed up, right? Which we didn't realize when we saw the before picture. So what that means is like increased blood flow. Not that the brain is bigger, but it's just increased blood flow. It's like it's just a healthier picture, a healthier brain. And then, as you can see, these little dimples have really kind of disappeared. And that means that, again, there's more blood flow. And the top part of the brain here is, in the top part of the picture, rather, is the frontal part of the brain. So which is really where we want it. We want it everywhere, but the frontal part of the brain is where the reasoning and the planning and the some of the memory function, what is called executive function. So this is a much healthier looking brain that you can you can really relate to this picture. And most people, when you explain it to people, non-doctors, right, regular lay people, they can see and they can understand and relate to that. So next slide.
Chelsea, Kirti.
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but that if we go back to that picture, the ball in the middle that's sort of suspended where it's attached before, this is the question I always get, and I always sort of feel inadequate in explaining. So could you give us a little information about that difference in the before and after?
Yes. So
thank you.
So of course, so that actually looks like a 3D, right? It was really puzzling to the radiologists that ran this study because they had never seen it before. And so they actually had to consult with other neuroradiologists that were more experienced. And this was done at Penn by Dr. Newberg, and he's an authority. So we kind of giggled that, even he didn't know what it was. Not that he didn't know, but he had never seen it in a meditation study. And so anyway, long story short, that is believed to be the thalamus. The thalamus is a structure deep in the brain that is part of a series of anatomical parts that are responsible for connection, reduced stress, and reduce anxiety, reduce depression. So it's mostly a feeling of connection. And I can, as you can tell, I'm not the medical person myself, but I'm happy to, research this and send maybe a little more, a little better explanation of what the function is.
May I ask a question on this?
Please. Yes.
Is this the dorsal or the ventral part of the brain?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear because of the phone.
Is this the ventral or the dorsal part of the brain?
You know, I'm sorry, I don't know. I'm not the medical person, and I'm not a scientist.
Also,
But I'll respond. We're recording, so I'll respond.
okay, thank you.
Did you want to ask another question?
Is this white matter or gray matter?
I don't know, but thank you for asking. I'm glad that we have the opportunity to learn because these
Yeah,
are
because this is a real good slide, but in presenting this, I need to know, is this the ventral, the dorsal side, or is this the gray matter or white matter? I've been telling people that that's white matter, but I'm not really sure if it is.
Well, that's a great question. I will definitely look into it and ask the experts and find out, and respond. We'll respond when we send out the recording.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll go to the next slide. So this particular slide came from a study at University of Pennsylvania. And this was a study done in individuals referred by the Alzheimer's clinic to the neurology department. So all these individuals had a diagnosis of at least MCI, mild cognitive impairment. And they got scanned, they came to the study. They got scanned, they were taught Kirtan Kriya for the first time. They got scanned again that first day. They went home and practiced every day. And then after, I think it was an 8-week program, they came back, they got scanned, they practiced their last, so to speak, that last day of the research, and then they got scanned again. So they had 4 scans, before and after the first day and before and after the last day of their research project. So this is to explain why there are 4 pictures here. If you look at the top left picture with the big arrow, and you look at the little arrow, it says changes in the frontal lobe. So the little arrow here shows normal activity, right? Basically baseline normal activity. And then I'm giving you sort of the shortcut here. If you look at the bottom right picture and you look at the little arrow, you see in the same spot, this is the post-program meditation. So this is the last scan, the first scan and the last scan. And you can see that there is like a little light bulb, we call it, a little light bulb in the frontal lobe. And according to the radiologist, this is an incredible increase in brain function in the frontal lobe. So the interesting thing was that this really correlated with an increase in symptoms, an improvement of symptoms of concentration, attention, depression, less depression, improved interest and activity in their mental function. So this was a very significant study as well, and something that, again, you can share. And when people do see, because we want to see, right? We want to see to understand, and so people can see the increased effect. And one way that we used to we still explain it is like, imagine we go to the gym and we lift weights. I'm not a weightlifter, so I'm not a very good example, but if someone goes to the gym and they lift weights for 8 weeks every day, they will see an increase in muscle tone, whichever weight, whichever muscle they're targeting, right? And so this is exactly the same thing, but it's happening deep inside the brain. So next slide. I have a few sort of quick charts here about the results of the study, our first UCLA study on dementia caregivers, so caregivers of dementia patients. And I'll just go through these quickly. Kirtan Kriya increases telomerase by 43%, which is actually unheard of to this day. You can see the difference between the control group in red and the meditation group in blue. Next slide. According to the MMSE, which is a medically accepted and used memory screening tool, memory evaluation tool, cognition was highly improved. You can see again the difference between meditation in the blue and relaxation actually decrease with the red. And then next slide, Kirtan Kriya reduces inflammatory markers compared to relaxation. So again, it was very significant. The results were very significant. And then next slide, this is a study that we finished at West Virginia. Was a compilation of a couple of different studies that we funded there, but basically we noticed that it was the first time that we were able to do not only a study for 8 weeks, but also do a check, a follow-up 3 months and 6 months later, which is important because of course we know that how the effect of Kirtan Kriya, and it has an immediate effect. But what if somebody stops, or what if we don't monitor them and they're not maybe as consistent? And so what we found is that 3 months and 6 months later, when people continued to practice, the effect was, continued. In fact, so much so that even, as you can see, maybe even the relaxation group, which is a music listening, had improvement in memory function. So I think that in some way, this means that, everybody's different. Everybody has a different interest and different predisposition to what they can do. Because as teachers, we know that, as we will discuss, not everybody is interested in yoga, for example, or not everybody is interested or can exercise, or not everybody's interested in diet. So, but whatever, I think what this is telling us also is whatever people are interested in and they can continue practicing and they can continue improve, it's worth doing. So even if it's just a musical listening, right? Because look, you can see this. So I think that's sort of seeing this from a bigger picture point of view. So next slide, please. So our current study, which is just finished, just completed, is the Pink Brain Project at UCLA. We had 100 participants. The study was yoga and Kirtan Kriya in high-risk women. High-risk women meaning they're menopausal, they have mild cognitive impairment, and they have some form of heart disease. These are individuals that are highest risk for the development of Alzheimer's. So we kind of wanted to study this particular population, and we're beginning to publish those results. As an aside, as you all probably know now, women are the group that is at highest risk for development of Alzheimer's, just because of gender. It's almost a 2 to 1 to men. So it was an important study to do. Next slide. This is the very first paper that was just accepted was just published, I think a week or two ago. Yoga prevents gray matter atrophy in women at risk for Alzheimer's disease. And we're working now on making this paper for open access so that anyone can read it without having to pay. So we're working on that, but we'll have it for you soon. Next slide. And another paper that we published about a year ago is Spiritual Fitness, a New Dimension in Alzheimer's Disease Prevention. And I wanted to bring this up to tell you what we're doing, but also because spiritual fitness is almost like an emerging field within, if you will, integrative or holistic medicine. And one of the effects of Kirtan Kriya, besides this beautiful activity in the brain and reduction of inflammation and all of this on a physical, strictly physical standpoint, is really to touch your spirit. And so if we can, touch our spirit by practicing Kirtan Kriya, is really a beautiful thing, because we all want to be better and we want a better place, right? And we want to leave a beautiful legacy. So that's why I wanted to bring this up. Next slide, Chelsea, please. And just so you know, we have about close to 50 scientific papers published in prestigious medical journals in 19 years. A large portion being Kirtan Kriya, but also the other studies that we funded. And I won't bother you and I won't take time now with all the different papers, but here's a few. And Chelsea, if you could just run through them. There's a lot more. So, but, just to show you a few of them. So at this point, let's take a deep breath. And we can go to that slide. Yeah, let's take a deep breath and stretch for a second, because it's a lot. And I think I got kind of sidetracked here with all my technology issues. But we want to go to these frequently asked questions. So for those of you who came to the meditation challenge, you know that we had, it was very, very well received, a high, numbers of participants, and we assembled the most common questions. And so we wanted to respond to these all together so that you see what the appropriate response, what we would recommend that that you respond if and when you're asked these questions. So what we'll do, I'll read the questions, and then we have our panel of Linda, Jane, and Fletcher or Fateh, and they will answer the questions. So the first question is, what if I find resistance to the Kirtan Kriya practice when I approach new audiences and or facilities? And what does Satanama mean? And can these sounds be replaced? So we want to keep it short, but I invite any one of our panelists to answer, unless you want me to call on you.
I'll answer, Kirti. So if I find resistance, for me, I just tell people, I'm going to teach you as I've been taught. And I just trust, that I'm here to teach, I'm here to share this information, and I just go with it. And if people have resistance, I accept it, and I don't let it bother me. Satanama means infinity, life, death, and rebirth. It's the cycle of creation. And no, you do not want to replace these sounds. They're very specific for this meditation. And by changing the sounds, you can change the effect of the meditation. So that's something that you do not want to do. And
Thank you.
okay.
Linda, would you like to add or share your
I
opinion?
do. I do. I just noticed someone asked a question. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Someone asked a question, is there more or less resistance from a younger audience? And this is so perfect. I taught this to 6th graders. And they're very the girls are all attentive and the boys have ants in their pants. And I taught it to them just in one, maybe 30-second intervals instead of the full 2 minutes. And I told them as we started that what people need to remember is that even though this chant might not be a good fit for you today, or you're not sure it's a good fit for you, I'm sure you know someone else who could use it and find that it's relaxing and calming and comforting and helps them focus and concentrate better. And I have them do it in a short period of time, and then they teach it to each other. And this one little boy says, do you think this would be good for my grandfather? He's very anxious. So if we can find a way to soften the resistance and find different ways to get through. So the answer, in terms of younger audiences, it was very sweet. But I find the same kind of resistance with older people as well. So when we teach, it's with the idea that the individual who's learning might then also find themselves in the position of being the teacher.
Yeah.
Jane.
Yeah. I mean, I just thought I would share that, I've been teaching the Kirtan Kriya now for at least 10 years, mostly to senior audiences. And over that time, I've really only had one person ever express to me that they were uncomfortable with it because it felt too religious or too spiritual, right? I suggest that they just think of it as a sound, right? That it's just a sound that they're making with their mouth, that, that they don't have to go there. But maybe because I'm in the Washington, D.C. metro area, right? But I really haven't had a lot of resistance to it.
So we have a question. I have 2 elderly Catholic nuns in my memory enhancement class, which is awesome. And wondering if they would be receptive to this.
My encouragement would be to give it a try, to explain the magic and sort of mysticism of Sanskrit language is sending a blessing, just so these seed syllables have a very interesting, let's just call it holiness. I also have to say that I teach on Virginia's Eastern Shore, and someone told me, instead of Satanama, she does Jesus loves me, is that okay? And that's okay. So, I mean, I appreciate Fletcher's point of view, and I'm in agreement. We all have a different relationship with the world around us and inside of us. So there's my encouragement.
And then the other thing that I would like to add is that if you explain the benefits, one thing is somebody's, if we just go teach and say, oh, I want you to do this meditation, Satanama, they might just say, I don't know, but if we explain the benefits, people kind of relate to it in a different way. And so just so that you know, one of the studies that we did was comparing Satanama to 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it did not have the same effect. So wow. do people, ultimately, I think that if people have to choose between doing it and not doing it, I'd rather people do 1, 2, 3, 4 as an entry point, and then And then maybe over time, they'll be more open to adding Satanama.
Right. Kirti, what I often say to people too is that if for whatever reason they're uncomfortable with this or any part of the meditation, that I can only speak to the benefits that are reflected in the research, right? That any kind of meditation is good, and any variation of meditation is good and has benefits. But the specific benefits that I'm sharing in these charts, in this research, are with the traditional version of the meditation with the sound Satanama.
Yes, good point. We have a lot more comments. Should we address the comments, or should we go to question number 2? I'll leave it to my panel.
You say address the comments. I mean, we're here and our.
Sure.
Okay, so somebody said the before and after slide of the brain is that after one practice or many months of regular practice is after one practice, Gail. And then Trudy is saying that she would relate it to Latin when speaking with Catholics. Oh, that's interesting. And then Michelle is saying, I believe the nuns would relate to it. It's essentially a prayer without rosary beads. Oh, that's so interesting. That's a great comment. And then Rosita is asking if anyone can practice, for example, kids. So I think Linda just spoke to that. So yes, absolutely. Kids, it would be great for kids. It helps with school, right? Linda, would you like to say in what context you taught to little kids?
Yes. Yes. One situation, very different situations. I'll try to be brief. One, I will frequently go into schools to work with youngsters, yoga and meditation. And so working with the 6th graders, it was a one-time experience, and I wasn't in a position to do follow-up, but I will tell you that they all ended up being very excited about being able to turn and teach their peers. So it was taught in a way that it was easy to replicate, and let them take the seat of the teacher, not just be the student, which gave them some sense of autonomy. There's another question about students with ADHD. I teach youngsters between the ages of 18 and 24 stress management through yogic techniques, including meditation. And one of the youngsters said that when they were young in their school, they were taught the Kirtan Kriya. And that's the first time I ever got that feedback. It's incredibly effective for self-regulation, self-control, focus, concentration. As we all know, building better relationships with peers by learning to quiet the mind and listen. So incredibly potent with children. I mean, by the time 6th grade and above, maybe even younger, but yes.
Thank you. Well,
getting permission from parents.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so would you have to get permission from parents, or it's part of their school, or how does that work? Do you know?
It's a good question. I cannot answer it. I have no idea.
Okay. You're basically
meditation.
You're basically an invited teacher.
Correct.
Right.
And in another context, it's more as a consultant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So on
the parents are aware.
The parents are or aren't?
They are aware that meditation is a part of the program. Yes.
Okay, they are aware. Oh, okay. Thank you, Linda. And along those lines of the kids, there's a comment. I'm wondering about the use of Kirtan Kriya with school-age students with disabilities, including ADHD and difficulty attending and staying present. with an interest level to support learning for these students. And I was wondering, Fateh, one, if you have experience teaching, younger kids or kids, and if you know about, because I think there was something done with kids. So I was wondering if you would like to address this.
Okay. I haven't, let's see, I don't have a lot of experience teaching kids. And I don't remember if I don't think I taught Kirtan Kriya to them. But for mobility issues, I mean, if you can help them, move their fingers, I mean, that's something you may have to do to have them. You may need to help them. If that's what you need to do, then that's what you would do.
And there was some research done in schools. But there's been quite a bit of research done in schools with yoga and meditation. I am not familiar about Kirtan Kriya specifically. Are you? If there was something done in schools?
I can do a follow-up, Kirti, because I know, like Yoga for Youth.
Right.
I think they have a paper that was accepted, or and I'll have to ask if they taught Kirtan Kriya.
Yeah.
So I'll take that as a follow-up action.
Thank you.
You're
But for sure, any type of practice, Kirtan Kriya, or even deep breathing, has
Right.
shown, kids with ADHD, yes, and other, unfortunately, other issues. So.
Right.
Let's go to question number 2. What if I'm teaching a senior population and they have a mobility issue in their hands or other physical limitation? So Fletcher already responded a little bit. I concur. Sometimes you have to move people's fingers depending on what your setting is. Linda and Jane, would you like to?
Sure. Yeah, it is common that seniors will have some arthritis in their hands, right? So again, I don't get it a lot in the scheme of things, but it is possible, and it is certainly a common ailment. So I can offer them an option where, if it's not feasible for them or comfortable for them to tap their fingers this way, that they rest their hands on their laps and they press into their laps. That's another way that they can stimulate the nerve endings in their fingers, right? And send those same signals up to the brain. Or maybe they're able to hold their hands like this and press in for each syllable that way as well, right? So there may be different ways like that they can get the same benefits.
And Linda?
I agree with Jane. I agree with Jane. I have also had people use their more healthy responsive hand to tap the less responsive hand, so you still have the bilateral movement.
Yeah.
And you have the stimulation, and it's wonderful for people who've had strokes. But in the last group of youngsters that I taught, there was a young woman who was 20 who had a very rare disorder. And part of what she was learning was self-advocacy. And so she was asking how else she might be able to use. So there are multiple possibilities. And even if you're teaching someone on Zoom, you can demonstrate, you can give ideas. And we can also always learn from our students.
Thank you. Let's go to the next question. What if the people have difficulty with the movement, meaning the hand movement, chanting, and visualization? Who would like to respond?
I can respond to this one because I get this one all the time. This is the most common comment I get after we go through a Kirtan Kriya is, I have trouble with the visualization. So of all, but then sometimes I get somebody that says I have trouble with the finger movements. So you never quite know. But if they're having trouble coordinating all three, then we can encourage them to focus on the hand movement and the chants, right? And let the visualizations happen later, right? Or just to try their best with all three. And I always tell them that this is why we call it a meditation practice, right? Because the more you practice it, the easier it will get to coordinate. And I also reinforce that is why this meditation was thought to be so powerful for cognitive function, because it is a lot to coordinate and it is challenging. So I just say, the more you do it, the easier that visualization will come and the coordination will come, and you'll find yourself getting into the groove, and then you might lose it a little bit, but you get back to it, right? So that's been my experience.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to chime in?
Oh, I agree with Jane. I think she got it.
I think so too.
The little I have tried, one group in our support group I worked with for visualization was that I had them picture the spelling of the sound like saw, and picture just the letters coming into the top of the head, and like the old pneumatic tubes that you'd find at the pharmacy that would deliver the prescriptions. The letters, the sound is coming in through the top of the brain and going out through the eye, third eye, and then again, just to give them something to picture. And that seemed to work in that case.
Nice. I like that.
Very nice. And Jess said that she has broken down the process into more bite-sized pieces so that the finger movements become more accessible. But that's great, because anything that we can do to facilitate this learning and this experience to people is what we need to do. Maybe let's go to the number 4. Frequently asked questions. How can people keep track of the time themselves? So as you know, we have a recording. We created a recording, and actually now we have it on video of the meditation. And so to make it easier and to make it maybe a little softer and encourage people to sing, which is going to be hopefully the topic of another study group, the singing part. But yes, how else can people keep track of the time if they don't have the recording or can't play the recording? Fateh, would you like to?
Sure. I have a timer. I don't know if you can see it. I use my timer and I just preset it. Like I do 2 minutes for out loud and a whisper, and then 4 minutes for silence. And that's what I use myself. Trying to think what else. Yeah, I haven't done recording or, but yeah, if you could, like Mary Lou said, that would be great. Doing it on your phone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But
Linda,
yeah.
Linda, what would you suggest?
I think to keep it simple. I mean, I've gotten to a point where I know how many how many sets there are per minute, and while I'm even doing, so I'm counting something. I'm counting it in my own mind. But I think the easiest thing to do, and for me, I kept my eyes open through most of it at the beginning to watch the clock, to time my breath, to see how many times I could sing the Satanama on the exhalation. You can encourage people to make themselves an N of one. This is your research project. Try looking at the clock. An old analog clock is really lovely. It's very soothing, or use a timer on your phone. But it becomes like muscle memory. You know after a while how long it's been. So I'm one to simplify, use a clock.
Jane, would you like to add anything?
The same for me, but the only thing I would add is that I've heard Dr. Dharma, I've heard you, I've heard Satbir Khalsa answer that question and say it really is not too intrusive to open your eyes and look at the clock and then go back into it, right? And I just try to tell people too that once you do it for a while, you get a sense of it. And if you're going to stress over being exact, then you've defeated the whole thing. So I kind of play a little game with myself sometimes where I start and I do it, and then I open my eyes at the end and see how close I was. And I'm usually pretty close.
That's great. That's great. We have a good, very good question and comment from Gail, because it's really important to address this. I'm so glad we're here together and doing this. And she says, do you visualize this movement of the visualization with each sound, or can you visualize it at your own pace, for example? Like into the top of the head with Sata Nama coming out the front. So Sata Nama instead of Sata Nama. And then she is trying to figure out how to get a feel for how this can be done rather naturally, and if it can be made fit with your breath. So that's great question. It actually has at least two parts to it, to the answer. Who would like to start answering?
So the correct method of doing it is in and out on each sound. So it's sa, ta, na, ma, right? That is the traditional practice and the way the research that has been done, right? The breath is really in the background, right? There's already a lot going on with those three parts, right? The breath is just natural and in the background. And I find that the one way that you can sort of regulate the breath is to control the pace, right, of how you do it. So if you're following along with music or with someone who's chanting it, it's harder to do that. If you're doing it on your own, you can control the pace. So that breathing is easy. But when you learn to just sort of keep the breath natural and in the background, it won't be as awkward as it might feel at the beginning.
And that's the frequently asked question number 5.
Oh yeah, there we go.
That's ready for that. But Linda or Fletcher, would you like to answer as well?
I'm good. I think Jane covered it. So.
Linda, would you like to add anything?
Only that it takes time to measure the amount of time that it takes to chant and the amount of air that you've got for the flow. And so I know sometimes I might get the sata out at the very bottom, have to breathe in again before the nama comes through. And it's really just a matter of relaxing into the experience to start with and try to get the entire phrase out and before having to take another breath in. But the more we practice and the calmer and quieter we are doing it, the flow of sound ends up matching very beautifully the flow of breath. So the best answer I can give you is to breathe gently and deeply.
Very nice. I hope that kind of answered that question, Gail. It's really a very common question, and everybody starts at a different point. And I think part of this, there is the whole learning component of the meditation, especially, when you teach it for the first time, or to teach two people for the first time, or even the first 10th time, because it takes time and practice. But there's also the part of getting to know yourself and getting to know what works for you as a practitioner, as say, grandma in Virginia, that is doing this for the first time, or or for the 5th time. It's really a process of getting to know yourself, and so, like, how long your breath can last, and how long, and how that develops over time. Because as you chant and you practice, your breath will naturally become deeper and longer, and you'll be able to sustain more of the chanting before you have to inhale. So it's a training of everything. It's our breath, it's our attention, it's our getting in the flow, it's our voice. And that's why I would love to someday do a specific webinar on the voice, the use of your voice to chant, because it's a big world that we don't hardly ever talk about. And so it's really a process of getting to know ourselves. And so it takes time. I totally agree with Linda. It takes time to get used to it. And people will keep having these questions. In fact, we will send you, and if you have already received it after the meditation challenge, you can disregard this, but we will send you all the questions that we received during that meditation challenge. And we assembled them, and I responded very briefly to all of them, but you will see how often this question of the breath comes up. How do I breathe? I can't breathe, and the question, you will see these questions come up a lot. And so that you're prepared when you go out and teach, especially if you don't teach so much right now, you'll know that these are very, very common and recurring questions. So I hope that this is giving you, all this good background and good information to get you started, so that you can go out and really make a difference and make people feel better. Because sometimes it'll be a little rocky at the beginning, and people I remember teaching a class for a study, and and then people were complaining, and this is very elderly people, and they were complaining during the meditation because of this and that and the other, and and then at the end they were, oh, I feel so much better, I feel so relaxed, I feel happier. And you see them smiling, and it makes it all worthwhile. So anyway, this is, sorry, I'm just saying all this. Thanks, Gail. She said, it's perfect. I tend to breathe naturally, but also slowly and deeply. So I just wanted to know for sure what the correct technique would be. And then Jess said, I like to acknowledge that the frustration is part of the practice. Yes. And pacing the breathing, all the things, reassuring along the way. Exactly. And Mary Lou is asking if this is recommended to do right after rising from bed. I will ask our panel to answer.
I'll say, for this one, I would just say, whenever you have the time that you can do it. That's, right after you arise from bed is great. During the morning, lunchtime, you can do a consistent practice. That's the time I would use. So.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I just think it's personal, and I do think doing it first thing in the morning would be soothing and comforting and a beautiful way to greet the day. Mm-hmm. It's interesting, this next thing, that practice what you preach. I have to say, not only will I do my Kirtan Kriya in the morning, but it becomes your default. I find myself falling into Kirtan Kriya many times a day, and in the middle of the night, if I wake up and I can't sleep, it's my best friend.
Mm.
Anybody else?
No, I agree. I mean, in this, practice what you preach, I find it, it gives me more confidence teaching it, right? When I've had the personal experience, right? So yeah, I would absolutely recommend that. And I practice it pretty regularly, but if I fall off the train here and there, when I know I'm going to teach it, I will make sure that I get back into it and that I feel it in my own body, in my own mind, in my own spirit, so that, I'm ready to share.
Perfect. Yeah. So, well, this was really lovely, I think. And we're ready to go into the breakout rooms. We'll have about 10 minutes so we can have an additional more personal conversation if you like. And Mary Lou, sorry you're leaving, but thank you for joining us. It's lovely to see you. And so we're going to breakout rooms, and we'll see you there in a few seconds, and then we'll come back and close. And Chelsea is making it happen.
You're welcome to unmute yourselves if you'd like to. And I'm not sure, I guess maybe, oh, Chelsea's here too. Good. All right, let's just take a moment. First of all, I want to thank you all for being here today. And just quickly, obviously this is your opportunity to ask questions, talk about what's important to you, but I'm just curious if each of you could quickly introduce yourselves and just tell us a little bit about you and your work with Kirtan Kriya.
My name is Lydia. I'm from Los Angeles, and I took the course. It's been over 5 years, and the first few years I did practice myself. I still am a full-time caregiver, and it helped me. But I'm also a yoga therapist, and so while during the pandemic, I did a lot of teaching on Zoom, and that I would teach it as part of the pranayama, because it is pranayama practice. Where there was just a question right now about how you breathe. One of the things that I would do is teach them how to breathe first, by expanding the belly, expanding the ribs, filling up the lungs, because in the Kirtan Kriya, you are expanding the belly, you are expanding the ribs, and filling the lungs in order to sing the Kirtan Kriya, the Satanama. And the more they practice, the more they expand the lungs. And so I think it would help them. And answering that question, how do I breathe? by teaching them first how to breathe.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
You're welcome.
very much. Michelle.
Hi. Yeah, so I'm Michelle, and my background is in nursing, and I also have developed memory enhancement programs for people who have early memory loss, MCI, and early dementia and early Alzheimer's. I am new to this. I just started the course last week. So I'm on module 3. And but I have practiced the Kirtan Kriya a few times when I first looked into this program.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome. We need you. And I want to hear more about your memory enhancement programs. It's very exciting. Thank you for being here. Mark.
Hi, this is Mark in San Diego. My background was in law and business, but I had a lifelong interest and passion in biology, health, and well-being that once my business career came to an end, I was thinking about what I wanted to do next. So I am a certified health coach, and I attended the October 2019 BLTT session and was preparing to embark on that. And then, of course, a few months later, when COVID appeared on the scene, I decided to join the COVID effort and worked for county health for a little over a year as a case investigator, and just interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people and families and helped them with that. But now I'm back. So what I'm trying to say is I'm sort of back to where I was at early 2020, figuring out, how I'm going to embark on the application of what I learned in October of 2019. No real background in the practice of yoga, but excited to deliver the message. And as soon as I figure out what the medium for my message will be, I will let you know.
Well, hopefully by being in encounters like this, you'll learn what a lot of different people are doing in their own specific ways, and for yourself, you'll figure out the right combination. So we're here for you. Is all I can say.
Thanks.
Thank you, Trudy.
Hi. Well, my experience with this is that I became a guest speaker for a class out of San Diego Community College, and it was called Alzheimer's Science of Prevention, and I was representing the Alzheimer's Research and Prevention Foundation. And then from there, I've been hired as an instructor in their brain fitness program. But when I was doing the guest speaking, I would do a condensed version of many of the things that the 4 pillars, and I would always teach the KK meditation. So it was a way for me to not only, spread the word, but practice myself. And it's become one of my go-to practices. So I'm happy to be part of this and gain more information.
Thank you, Trudy.
Mm-hmm.
Mayor Bonnie.
Yes. Hi, everyone. Well, I've been practicing Kirtan Kriya as a student at least for 25 years. So I'm familiar with the benefits, but and then as a teacher of Kundalini Yoga and breathwalk, also, in that context, and teaching Kirtan Kriya in classes and so on to seniors groups and different and children. But particularly, and I completed the course in November, December of last year. So I'll be graduating on Saturday. And particularly, which was a wonderful experience, is and I've been teaching in India for the past 11 years. And so I normally teach breath walk. So very similar, but always teach the Kirtan Kriya at the end of a breath walk session. And people just love that. They really love it. And all the questions that we've been encountering today, they've been asking. So that was very useful. And but my experience of late, well, of a few years ago is when I was in India, I was teaching at a detoxification center in a psychiatric ward and taught a lot of Kirtan Kriya. Every day for those 9 months I was there, every day, 6-7 days a week. And so I saw directly, and people would share with me also the effect of this particular meditation. We did a lot of other things, but that was always, the Kirtan Kriya was always part of the practice that we're offering. And now, because I've completed the training, I've been, sharing and creating classes with the brain longevity. And of course, Kirtan Kriya is always there, no matter what we're talking about. So that's my perspective. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, Chelsea, I don't know if you're here and listening or not. Are you here? Okay,
here.
Chelsea's elsewhere.
I'm
we
here
have
listening.
Oh, good. Okay, we have 1.5 minutes left. Has this last presentation clarified any questions you might have had? Has it given you inspiration and encouragement to refine your own practice or to find more comfort in teaching it to others? I'd like to know if you have questions quickly and observations.
If I can go quickly, I really appreciated getting into the details of those different diagrams of the brain scans. That was really, really helpful in being able to explain it properly, because you go, okay, this is before, this is after, and you go, where do I go from there? So this was really useful, and hopefully we can get into greater details from the questions that were asked.
Good.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Everyone else?
It's extremely helpful as well. And I look forward to receiving some of those slides as well and incorporating them into my own presentations.
Excellent. Excellent. Michelle, anything?
Very helpful. I appreciate this. Like I said, it's all new to me, and so I'm really soaking all this up.
Good. Outstanding. Thank you all for being here, and thank you.
Thank you.
I'm extremely grateful to know more about you. This peer-to-peer programming is really precious to us.
So the others will be joining us shortly.
Okay.
We just have to give them a minute to pop in.
Okay. Right. Our hope really is that as time goes by, this, as peers, will have more time to really focus in on the nitty-gritty of what it is that we do, what we're hoping to achieve, how we're feeling about that, how to refine what we're doing. Okay, so here we are at the end of a really fascinating session. Please, if you have any unanswered questions or unmet needs from this webinar, please send information to Chelsea. Her email, as you can see, is on this slide. This program today was a test. It's the first time we've done programming like this after a meditation challenge. So please let us know if you would like more and how you might like the format to be. Okay, the next slide tells you about the resources from ARPF, a new flyer coming, information about the Kirtan Kriya CD that's downloadable. You know now about the white papers that are free in the member resource section. There's a new meditation manual and a brand new video that we're very, very excited about. And then, okay, next slide. Upcoming events. Hooray, we have a BLTT graduation coming up this weekend. They're a lot of fun. People, what we do, at the same time we were working with other people, we're doing it in some ways in isolation, and there can be a sense of aloneness. So when everyone shows up for the graduation, past graduates, it just makes it more exciting and vibrant. On May 5th, the next peer-to-peer program is on best practices for recommending diet and supplements. Learning how to talk about nutrition is so important. And so this coming Thursday, May 5th, join us for that. On Wednesday, May 18th, is a program on how to stay healthier and live longer through spiritual practices. And good, so there will be extra slides coming. I'm here to encourage you to read the emails that come from ARPF filled with information and opportunities like this. I also want to remind you that membership in the foundation for us as brain longevity specialists is $125 annually, and for an extra $75, there's a scholars category that entitles you to come to peer-to-peer programming on a monthly basis. And the programs are fascinating. And I think as you picked up today, there's opportunity to get to know not just one another, but to get to know ourselves better too in relationship to what we're doing. So thank you so much for being here. On behalf of Kirti and everyone at ARPF, thank you for your loving presence and your devotion to the practices. Namaste.
And thank you to the panelists and our wonderful speakers and all of you, all of the participants. Thank you, Linda and Fletcher and Jane.
Bye,
and Chelsea.
everyone.
Stay well.
Thank you
everyone.
always, Chelsea. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank everyone for your questions. It's exceptional. It makes us all better at what we do.
Very good. Have a great day. We'll see you soon.
Bye.